Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello guys, how are you? Welcome to the mental workload tutorial. Before we start this tutorial, let's we pray together. Pray start. Enough. Okay, in this tutorial we will discuss about the mental workload. Yup, in this tutorial we will learn how to measure someone's mental workload. Basically, workload consists of the physical load and the mental load. The differences is based on the focus of the jobs. There are jobs that focus on physical load and the other side focus on the mental load. Alright, in this tutorial we will discuss about the first is the objective of the tutorial and the second is the input of and the output of the tutorial and the third is the material of mental workload tutorial and the fourth we will do some exercise and discussion about it and for the last is conclusion. Okay, let's start using this illustration. Okay, in this illustration, there is a second year student that study under practicum with an online system because of the COVID-19 pandemic. On a day, besides the study from home, the student also gets some assignment for each subject. Besides on the academic activities, the student also join some organization. Surely, the situation is also what you are experiencing, right? Okay, that situation, surely this student will be feel unconfident, stressful, worried, sad, confused, and so on. That's all is an indication that him exposed to the mental workload. Then, in this tutorial, we will learn how to measure the cause of the mental workload using the questionnaire, and we will know how to calculate and classify the score of the mental workload. Okay, next, there are four objectives in this tutorial. First, you guys can understand the basic measurement concept of the mental workload. And for the second is you be able to measure and analyze the subjective score of mental workload using NASA questionnaire. And for the third is you can interpret and analyze the score of mental workload. And for the last is you be able to give some recommendation based on analysis result of mental workload. Next, for the input and the output of this tutorial, for the input is there are some same with the previous tutorial. You have to take notes data of the respondent using NASA questionnaire, and for the output there are NASA score, mental workload classification, and analyze of mental workload, and for the last is give recommendation. For the first material, before this tutorial, we already know there are three types of workload. On the previous tutorial, we already discussed about the physically workload, and for the next tutorial, we will discuss about the time workload. And now we will focus on mental workload. So we know that mental workload is the difference between the workload demands of the task and the maximum mental load capacity of a person in a motivated condition. Okay, let's move on factors that affect mental workload. There are two factors. First is internal that occur from within the operator and it's affected by him or herself. And for the second is external that occur from the outside of operator. Okay, let's we discuss one by one. We will start with the internal factors. First is somatic factors. It means the operator's body conditions such as gender, age, body size, nutritional status, and health condition. For physiological factors related to the operator's psychic or soul such as motivation, perception, belief, desire, satisfaction, and so on. Next, for the external factors are something that support physical work such as tools, type of work, layout, and etc. And for work organization that can affect the workload such as work shifting, overtime hours, rest time, and position. And then for the work environment, that environment that includes physical work environment such as temperature, vibration, noise, and etc. And for the chemical work environment such as radioactivity, chemicals, oxygen level, and for the biological work environment such as virus and bacterial that affected work performance, and for physiological work environment like the condition of the workplace, whether it's conducive or not. Okay, we will have discussed about the factors that affecting mental workload. So now we will discuss about the impact of excessive mental workload. First is physical impact that we can feel like headache, dizzy, sleep disorder, and pain in the neck and spine. And for the second is mental impact such as easy to forget, anxious, and easily offended. For the last is social impact like a smoke alone and choose to be alone. Okay, no, we already know the cause and the impact of the mental workload. So to control our or the others' mental workload, we can do some ways. For the first is mental workload should be adjusted to the ability and work capacity of the workers, conservative of avoiding any overload or workload was too light. For example, in a day, you guys can do assignment and one meeting. Then if you get some assignment on that day, you can arrange to do it later or and on the next day. For the second is working hours should be adjusted well to demands of tasks and responsibility outside of the job. For example, if someone can only study from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. and work on assignment from 3 p.m. till 9 p.m., so don't do any assignment or study more that hour. For conclusion, for first and the second points is you have to make a priority scale to do all of your activity. For the third, every worker should be given the opportunity to develop a career, get promotion and development expertise. It's like give freedom or creativity in doing assignment so they can explore themselves but still in line with the rules. For the fourth is the task should be designed to be able to provide simulation and opportunities for workers to use their skill. So it means the place to work the workers based on their capability and superiority. The last is establish healthy social environment that is between the workers with each other. For example, establish a supportive and confident workplace condition. Okay, there are two types of the mental workload measurement method. It is objectives and subjective. If it is objective, the measurement using a tool, then for the subjective one, we will not use a tool but we will ask to the operator directly. First, for the example of objectives methods are for the first is measurement of the bling rate. It's usually related to the work that need visual attention associated with the less blinking and the duration of blinking is shorter. For the second is flicker test, measure the difference in the performance of the human eye using a flicker tool. There is a light source that flashes faster and faster until it is difficult to the ordinary eye to follow. For the third is saliva acid measurement. For this method, we will use a tool named Kokorometer. Yes, we have on laboratory, and then measuring stress through the enzyme amylase in saliva is one of way to find out how much stress someone is experiencing. The indication of this test is the higher the amylase content in saliva, it means the higher the level of stress. Then for the subjective one are subjective workload assessment technique or SWOT. This method is describe the work system as a multidimensional model of workload which consists of three dimensions or factors, namely time load, mental effort load, and physiological stress. And then for the second is NASA TLX. For this method, we will discuss later on the next slide. And for the third is modified Cooper-Harper scaling. This method usually used to know level of mental workload that the mental load imposed by manual control tasks, particularly on aircraft handling quality. For the fourth is rating scale mental effort RSMA, the subjective workload measurement method with a single scale. Respondents were asked to provide a mark on a scale of 0 until 150 with a description of several anchor points. And in this tutorial, we will use the subjective way to determine level of apparatus mental workload. Yep, we will use NASA TLX. Maybe all of you wonder why we use this method. Why not the others? Because NASA TLX is the most complex and valid method based on apparatus subjective. Besides of that, this tutorial is online, so we can use the laboratory tools. Okay, we will focus on NASA TLX method. NASA TLX is a method of mental workload subjective measurement, and NASA TLX measurement method is divided into two phases. For the first phase is the comparison of each scale paired comparison, and for the second is giving value to the work, event scoring. Okay, so NASA TLX use six dimension to assess mental workload. There are mental demands, physical demands, temporal demands, performance, frustration level, and effort. For the upper line, include mental demand, physical demand, and temporal demand is related to the pressure on its work. Then, for the performance, effort, and frustration level is related to the operators. For the detail, let's move to the next slide. For this section forward, you will know how to give question to the operators with the usual or informal language. This is so the operator can understand and what we mean. And okay, let's we discuss one by one. For mental demand, how much mental and perceptual activity is needed to see, remember, and search? The question is like how big is the mental demand can be thought or feeling when doing your work on a scale of very low is 0 and for the very high is 100. Okay, next for physical demand. This is the amount of physical activity required such as pushing, pulling and rotation control. And then the question is like how big is the physical demand when doing your job? On a scale of very low is 0 and very high is 100. Okay, for the temporal demand. Temporal demand is the amount of pressure associated with the passive time during the work. For the question is like how rushed are you in completing your work? On a scale of very low is 0 and for very high is 100. Then for performance, performance is how big is a person's success in the job and how satisfied they are with their job. And then for the question is like how satisfied are you in doing and when you have completed your work? This dimension has a different value scale from the other dimension. It has the opposite scale, so please be aware. If perfect, the scale is 0 and for the failed, the, the scale is 100. Okay, for frustration level, this is describe how insecure, discouraged, and irritable and distracted with their work. The question is like how anxious and stressed do you feel about your job? On a scale of very low is 0 and the for very high is 100. And the last is effort. It's like the how hard of work is needed to achieve level of performance. The question is like, how hard do you strive to achieve satisfaction performance while doing your job? On a scale of very low is 0 and for the very high is 100. Alright, to have a mental workload final score, we should do some steps. First step is weighting. For example, in the screen, you can give 15 questions that compare each dimension. The dimension that written in the weighting cell are the more dominant dimensions. For the example, okay, if you ask the operator like, sir, uh, for complete your task, do you need thinking, remember, and calculating activities more than physical activity? If the operator answer is the process of physical is more frequent use than the process of remembering, counting, or thinking, so in weighting physical demand is more dominant than mental demand. Furthermore, you can write PD on your observation sheet like this. Okay, the second step is giving the rating on each dimension. In the rating process, respondents were asked to give a rating to each dimension of mental load. The rating given is subjective depending on the mental load felt by the respondent. Then after you get the rating for each dimensions, you can ask the cause of the operator give that rating value. This is very helpful to the analysis process for the analysis process. And then don't forget the performance dimension, the value scale is opposite by the other dimension. The lower value, so the more perfect, it means the workload is lower. Furthermore, the higher value, so the bigger of the mental workload score. Okay, for the next step is calculating the value of the product. To get the product value, you can multiply the rating of each dimension with the weighting factor. Then if already get the product value of each dimension, for the next step you can total all, then you will get weighted workload value. Then, well, last but not least, calculate weighted workload average to get a final mental workload score. To get a final mental workload score, uh, is weighted workload value that we have before divided by 15. Then for the last is you can classify the score with the table behind. Whether the score is on the low, moderate, barely high, high, or very high level. Okay, to give more understanding about the mental workload, there is an example case study that we can discuss. Okay, from this KD, we know that in this case, the measurement of mental workload on work in the field of transport, especially on the job as public transport drivers, taxi drivers, and travel on one of the terminals in Yogyakarta. The following process steps is for like before, you should do the weighting. Questionnaire comparative indicator were distributed to the three respondents working at the same place. Then do the recapitulation to tally the number of questionnaires distributed so as to get the following results. Like this. So this is the comparison of the each dimension, and then after that, this is the resume of the result. This is on the object public transport driver that we know that for mental demand he has one, for physical demand the amount of is four, for temporal demand is four, for performance is three, for effort is three, and for frustration is zero. This is the for public transport driver. And then for the taxi driver, for the mental demand is 2 and physical demand is 2, temporal demand is 4, and for performance is 1, and effort is 3, and frustration is 3. And then for the last is travel driver. For the amount of the mental demand is 2, for physical demand is 3, for temporal demand is 2, and for performance is 4, and for effort is 0, and for the frustration is 4. On each object it has a total indicator is 15. And then after that, we should giving a rating for each dimension. Okay, and this is the result of the rating. This is the ratio of result of the giving a rating for each object. And then for the third is should uh we should to do product value calculation defined by multiplying rating with the weight factor to each descriptor, so that as result 6 products value for 6 indicators includes MD, PD, TD, OP, and EF and FR. So for the object, for public transport driver, it has some product value, and for taxi it's like on the screen, and travel driver is like on the screen. Okay, for the fourth is calculating weighted workload. This is defined by assuming 6 product value that we have before. The result as follows. For the public transport driver, it has total 950, and for the taxi driver we got 1050, and for the travel driver we got 933. Okay, for the last is calculating weight workload average, defined by dividing weight workload average with total weighting value as 15. The result as follows. For from this section, we know that the public transport driver has a total final score is 63.3, and for the taxi driver we got 70, and for the travel driver we got 62. And then for the depth value mental workload, we can do score interpretation to know whether the value of mental workload is on the what level. For the public transport driver, we know that the category of value mental workload is high, and for the taxi driver is high, and the loss for the travel driver is high. So the recommendation for this case study is based on the calculation of the workload that has been done using the NASA TLX. Mental workload on the operator one who works as a driver of public transport is 63.33. So based on these values, the workload experienced by the operator one is at the mm, average 50 until 79, which means it has higher workload. The dominant factor resulting from a high workload on the carrier one is the factor of physical strength, in which the result of the calculation can be seen that one of the activities that make the operator when burden is in terms of physical needs or PD, where the operator one age uh, more than 40 years are required to work as a driver of public transport around the city looking for passengers from morning until late afternoon, so it requires a lot of energy in doing his job. Okay, Alhamdulillah, this is the bonus slide to you. Please do these exercises by yourself. Then on the tutorial class, if the assistant on duty asks to you about the result, you can give your answer, and then of course you will get some added value for supporting your post test or report value. Well, Alhamdulillah, the discussion about mental workload material is completed. Don't forget to re-understand the material and make a list of questions in the section that you still confused about, which can be asked on your tutorial class. Anyway, don't forget to always be healthy. Hopefully, this pandemic will be end sooner. Amen. And finally, I believe that you guys can understand it well, and I'm sorry if my explanation is not clear. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.